to have a look at the motor casing part of the ElectroRockets motor. So we just pull the actual motor part itself out. The commutator here, again probably not very clear on this camera, is actually quite gunky. So this should be nice and shiny, and it's just black with gunge. So we're just going to get a bit of wet and dry paper, and also a little bit of the Aerocline's electrical contact cleaner as well, just to clean up this part here on the end, because this is the part where the brushes actually make contact and the electricity actually goes and flows through the motor itself. So this is so gunked up, I'm not surprised it's not working. So we'll just clean this up while the end cap's soaking away in the solution, and hopefully this motor, as I say, will see, it's just, I can see black stuff on my fingers from it. It's just horrendous, it's like soot. So hopefully this motor will live again. With the motor spindle removed, it's as well just to check that all these connections are intact. In my experience, that I found that generally the interior of the motor spindle is in very good condition. I think I've only found one, the ones I've taken apart, where the wire has just become broken and detached. If you find one like this, then I suppose there is the option of trying to rewind this motor spindle, but it's not something I've actually done, and I've always looked at it as something a bit more specialist. But if you feel confident of doing it, then certainly have a go. But as I say, generally, other than just keep making sure the commutator is clean, these connections have always generally been unaffected by any of the corrosion in the car. It never seems to get that much further into the motor, other than sort of around this area here where the brushes are. So we've got all our components now. This is the end cap that has just come out of the cleaner. Dried it out. First of all, washed it in water just to neutralise the solution, dried it out, put a bit of wet and dry on various little bits to make sure everything is clean. And I've now actually positioned the motor brushes ready for the motor reassembly. If we just go back to my drawing again, just to refresh ourselves what I've done. The brushes are now being pushed back into the corner here, and they're just sitting in front of this hole, this one here, and this brush here is now sitting in this position just in front of this hole, so they're clear of the axle hole for so we don't crush them when we put the motor back together. And when the motor is back together, I'm going to have to go away into a dark corner and stick some pins through these holes just to release them, so they will rest on the commutator. Speaking of which, this is the motor spindle, and the commutator is now all nice and clean and shiny, and it was all black before, so I'm fairly confident this motor will actually burst back into life. The motor casing, now as I said earlier, you have to make sure that you remember which way this came off and it goes back on the same way round. The magnets inside aren't painted, and there's no clue as to which way it came off, so I knew that this sort of splodge bit here was on the bottom. But you may have decided, as I said in the earlier video, hopefully, to have made a mental note, put a mark on it or put a sticker on it like that, just to make sure you know which is top and which is bottom, because if you get it the wrong way round, the motor's going to go backwards if it does work, and then you've got to take it all apart and put it all back together again. So we will put the commutator, sorry, the motor spindle back into the casing, and then the end cap here, so just double checking that the brushes are clear of the hole so I don't crush them, and we're going to put that through there. This little contact just slips under the I think the things I just need to bend these back a bit further. The cap's not quite going on, so I just need to bend these back a bit just to give it a bit of clearance. Let's just check that I've got it the right way around again. Double check that the brushes are still clear of the hole. Just going to, these little tab things, they're really a nuisance. They're just sticking a bit proud, that's better. Always double check that you got it the right way around and the brushes are clear. That's better. Right, now we've just got to bend these tabs back to secure the end plate. Right, so 2 little holes here. I've got to go away now and just stick a pin through there, and hopefully I'll be able to hear them click and they'll be resting and I'll be able to test the motor. Right, I've just done the little thing with the pin, so just poking it through these 2 holes here. I think I heard them click, so we're now going to just give this motor a test. We've got our D cell here. It's 1.5 volts, got some wires attached to it. So we're going to just put this black wire is the positive terminal, and that will just rest on the motor casing, and then the negative terminal goes onto that contact there, and hopefully this should work. Yep. So the motor's back to life. So all we need now to do is to put the wheels back on and to put the motor back into the chassis. The other one is still cooking, the one that I took, the one of the non-runner, but this is the one that this particular motor came off. So if for argument's sake we could say that this is the one that came out of the cleaning fluid, so after it comes out of the cleaning fluid you need to just wash it in clean water, let it dry off, and then work away with some sort of wet and dry paper, going through all the various grades to get rid of any tarnishing that's left. Once you've done that, it's just a case of putting everything back together. So the motor goes back into the chassis as it was before. You need to resolder this connector here to the one on the top here. So put the wheels back together. It's always a good idea to put a little bit of machine oil into this, especially if we had it taken apart, just to give it a bit of lubrication on the axle. Not too much, just a very small amount. And yeah, so this ElectroRocket is back on the track. So here we have the reassembled chassis. I've just had to resolder this connection here, and everything's working fine. Just as a sort of passing piece of advice, really, that if the only cars you can find are the sort of relatively bad condition ones, you may find in order to get or to make up one running car, you need to buy maybe 2 or even 3 cars to get the parts that you need, because it may be that there's some parts that are good on one car and not on another, so you can sort of, between the 2 or worst case 3 cars, you can make up one running chassis. What this does mean, you end up with a sort of spare parts bin like I have here, different bits and pieces. But it's also always quite useful. I mean, for example, earlier on you saw me trying to take the tyres off the other bad chassis, and the tyres were quite very badly perished, and sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. It's just very random. So having a sort of parts bin of spare wheels and tyres and things is quite useful. But I wouldn't sort of pay too much for the really bad cars. I mean, some people ask sort of £25–30 for the really bad cars, and I just wouldn't touch them. I generally wait, and you can generally, sometimes you usually can pick them up for about £5 or £6, £10 at the very most, but about £5. The better ones, I would probably be quite willing to spend 25, 35, even £40 for the really good ones. Anyway, I hope that's been of some help. So, yes, even the basket cases, if you're able to rewind the brushes, even the bad motors will come to life eventually, as long as the motor spindle is in a good condition. And generally the interior here, the contacts are quite robust actually compared to the Hot Wheels Sizzlers cars, and it's not often that you see one where these are broken. Probably if they've been broken, it's been broken by the kid who originally played with it back in the 1970s. Anyway, this concludes this particular video, and we'll move on to the Phase 2 Corgi ElectroRocket. And just one last passing comment about power cells. We'll have another video later on where I'll talk about how you find these power cells and what they are, and charging, and a few other bits and pieces. So we'll do that probably in a final video, and I'll mop up any bits that I've completely forgotten, which I'm sure there are somewhere. Okay.